Ask you though, Jennifer, if you go to jail, I'll bake a cake and put a saw in it. What does that mean?
Well, it sounds like to me it means she wanted to aid and abet him to either an escape or to possibly, and I know the attorney said no, 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 but could it have been for him to harm himself? I don't know what kind of saw you could use to escape, but you could certainly use some sort of saw to harm yourself while in prison. And I've said many times I'm very concerned about the circumstances surrounding the death of Brian Laundrie. And furthermore, in that letter that he wrote, he discusses, or in the notebook, he discusses actually having someone else take his life, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting. And to be fair, I texted Mr. Bertolino about this new information about a letter from Roberta to Brian and asking him what this was. And he said, I do know, specifically about the Burn This letter, I do know it's a movie, and what she wrote on the cover of a letter to Brian many months before the trip, he says many months, had the title of the movie on there, and there apparently is a movie, Burn This Letter. Very, very strange. Dr. Ludwig, I want to get to you. In the notebook, Brian Laundrie says Gabby hurt herself in the water, and when he killed her, he called it a mercy killing, which was very, very strange. And I want to read you, Dr. Ludwig, a part of what he wrote in the notebook. He said, when I pulled Gabby out of the water, she couldn't tell me what hurt. She had a small bump on her forehead that eventually got larger. Her feet hurt, her wrist hurt, but she was freezing, shaking violently while carrying her. She continually made sounds of pain. Laying next to her, she said, little lapsing between violent shakes, gasping for pain, begging for an end to her pain. I mean, come on, Dr. Ludwig. Is this just an abuser trying to justify his abuse? What is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, very often what we see with abusers is that they're very controlling. So Brian clearly wants to control the narrative of this story. And clearly this was not a mercy killing. I think what he's describing is how Gabby was while he was choking her to death. I could certainly see Gabby having that kind of physical reaction while he was killing her. But he's controlling the narrative because Brian knew or wanted this letter to get out, and he wanted everyone to read it. So we see that Brian continues to be very controlling and to try to almost position Gabby in some strange way. If Gabby is hurt, why not call 911? Why not bring her to a hospital? Mercy killing? That's just a bizarre jump.
Yeah, Dr. Ludwig, I thought it was interesting that the letter was released today, and you mentioned that you think that he wanted people to read it. It almost did read like that, almost like he was trying to justify what he did to the world.
Absolutely. And I think he was trying to protect his parents in the letter. And I think we also see psychologically something very interesting where Brian says that Gabby was the love of his life and he couldn't imagine living without her. And I do believe that part to be true because with violent partners who kill their lovers, very often they're highly dependent individuals. And when they kill their lover, they then realize how dependent and lost they are without this other person in their life to beat and to blame and to target. So I do believe he was suicidal after he killed Gabby and didn't know what to do with himself. But here we see the sociopathy that he has. If you look at the writing, it's very neatly written. He wanted people to be able to read his writing, read his narrative, protect his parents, and have a sense of what he wanted the world to envision the ending of Gabby's life the way he wanted us to see it, not the way it really happened.
So disturbing. Jennifer, the part of the letter where he says that Gabby hurt herself and fell in the river, in the stream, really. I was out there, Jennifer. I was in the spot where Gabby was killed. I saw where the van was. I had incredible cell phone service out there. I had no issue with cell phone service. The area was not that big from where the creek was. It's about a 5-minute walk to the van. I mean, the story doesn't seem to add up that you couldn't go get help or make a phone call, Jennifer.
Yes, quite frankly, evidentiary-wise, this is a ridiculous assertion, and an assertion to try in some way to make his actions look justified. And we call them self-serving statements, and we see them often with criminals and sociopaths. And it was typical of someone who is a domestic violence abuser, and not surprising.
And he, you know, also after this apparent thing where he says she hurt herself and yada, 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 he still managed to get in the van and drive all the way home and use her debit card and then hide out and all of the rest. Dr. Ludwig, I want to read you a part of the letter where he describes why he rushed back to Florida. He writes, I rushed home to spend my time I had left with my family. I wanted to drive north and let James or TJ killed me. He also doesn't have great grammar, by the way. But I wouldn't want them to spend time in jail over my mistake, even though I'm sure they would have liked to. I am ending my life not because of a fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. So it seems like he was planning to kill himself maybe before he even got home. He talks a lot about Gabby's family. I mean, do you think he really cared about them? Did he really care about her family?
You know, it's hard to know. Even killers sometimes see themselves as really good people. So Brian could have felt that he did love Gabby, he loved the family. And, what's interesting, though, is that he goes back home and his family acted very odd, not the way normal parents would act whose son was in this position. And it's almost like a regression. I wonder if his family enabled him in some way. They knew that he was troubled, and it sounds like the mother is troubled as well, and that they would somehow fix it, or he needed to be in their presence. So I find that interesting, that somehow I imagine his parents or family have been protecting him for a long time when he misbehaved, and I'm sure he would get in trouble a lot, and I'm sure they knew something was off with him. But I think we need to be suspect, because this is a sociopath who wants us to believe what he's saying, and he sees himself as a good person who went awry, who went off, who impulsively did the wrong thing at times. Because at the end of the letter, he says, I hope Gabby's parents will like that I'll be eaten by animals. So he understands that Gabby's parents will hate him after this event.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing was the very end of the letter, he says something about don't litter and pick this letter up because Gabby didn't like littering. I mean, you're talking about killing your fiance and then you're talking about picking up litter. It didn't make much sense. Real quick, I've only got a few more seconds, Jennifer, but you heard Dr. Ludwig talking about the Laundries. Do you, Jennifer, think they knew? Do you think they were in on this?
I don't think they planned it with him. I think they absolutely knew right after it occurred. And I'm not so sure there couldn't be accessory after the fact or aiding and abetting I know it was considered by the FBI. Clearly, they've returned all the evidence. Clearly, the case is closed. But I think this evidence would show that civilly, which just requires a preponderance of the evidence as opposed to a reasonable doubt requirement, I'm thinking the Petitos and the Schmitz might have a good civil case here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this moves forward. I didn't expect this today. You both have been following this case closely also. I didn't expect that notebook was going to reveal all of that. And I certainly didn't expect we were going to find out today, just a couple of hours ago, about this new letter from Roberta to Brian. That really took me off guard. Jennifer Coffendorfer and Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you so much for coming on tonight to discuss. We appreciate it.